Earlier this year, as we started to emerge from the pandemic, there were a number of very high-profile instances of mass violence with guns. These mass shootings became common once again after about a year of not really having them. Now, I don't think that they're really making news in the same way as they were earlier in this year, but that does not mean that they've stopped. And there have been a lot of horrible mass shootings, just for instance, over the past weekend. So let's run through a bit of the gun violence that we're seeing. At least 4 major US cities were reeling from an onslaught of mass shootings that left 38 people wounded and 6 dead. And it's spread across the country. In Chicago, a woman was killed and 9 others were wounded when 2 men opened fire on a group standing on a sidewalk in the Chatham neighborhood on the city's south side. In the South Georgia city of Savannah, police said 1 man was killed and 7 other people were wounded in a mass shooting Friday evening. 2 of the wounded were children, an 18-month-old and a 13-year-old. About 4 hours later, over in Austin's downtown entertainment district, I think it might have actually been on 6th Street, a shooting left 1 dead, 13 people wounded, and another in critical condition. And by the way, if you look at overall, the Gun Violence Archive, an online site that tracks shootings across the country, reports that there have been 270 mass shootings so far this year. This is, they define it as any incident in which 4 or more people are shot. So, I mean, it was pretty much all over, and that's just the weekend, was. So we had this like brief reprieve from gun violence, but it really seems like it's coming back.
Yeah, and you often do see a spike in violence across the country in the summer months because people are just outside, nothing to do, and it's hot. And so that's just something that generally happens. And yeah, I'm not surprised that while people were inside, they managed not to shoot each other as much last year, right? Which was a nice thing for once. But it's disheartening because I think people in this country have been conditioned to think that violence is just a part of what we do here. It's as guaranteed as the sun rising in the east every single morning. There's just going to be violence in America, particularly of the gun kind, because people got it in their heads that guns are integral, yeah, thanks. Are integral to our lives here in this country. Like people just dumb enough to think that. I feel actually thankful to have grown up in New York City where the gun stuff wasn't a thing. In fact, they came out with extremely punitive gun laws. Like if you were found to be with a gun, you get like 2 years minimum, right? Oh, wow. And I think that went a long way in decreasing gun violence, and just an idea that just like, you know what? I'm not gonna bring this thing out or around me if I don't absolutely have to, because if the cops just search me, I'm going to the freaking pokey. And so, I feel thankful to have grown up in an environment where you weren't too worried about who's got a gun or who doesn't. But yeah, this stuff is disheartening, man. People getting shot left and right.
Yeah, I agree. It is left and right. I too, like, I don't actually, at the time, I wasn't that familiar with Connecticut gun laws, but I grew up in Bridgeport, and you were worried about getting jumped or whatever, but you weren't worried about getting shot necessarily. So that was nice. Now there's just way more guns, always more guns. Take a look at this map. This is number of gun deaths over just the first part of this year or whatever. It is all over. Like, and look, I don't necessarily know what like all the solutions are or what would work fastest, but I do know this. I don't think that more guns is a solution. I'm like willing to bet all of the few dollars that I have that the issue isn't that not enough people are packing guns. I think just so many. We're at 40% more than at this point in 2020, which granted, was pandemic times. We're 65% higher than we were in 2019. Like we were making up for lost ground. That is just terrible.
Yeah.
Now, really fast.
Yeah, and there's no end in sight either. So no, I'm just saying there's no end in sight to this either. I don't know how we get this thing corralled and under control. There just seems to be violences just seem to be spiking all over the place. I've seen people trying to figure it out via studies, etc. We probably won't understand the reasoning for years to come, but it seems like the country is just becoming more and more violent by the day.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.